Okay, so here's a question I got. I'm about to retire, haven't saved enough. Can I invest aggressively now to make up the difference? Okay, so say that's you. You have very little in your accounts by your own admission. You haven't saved and invested for retirement. No guilt, no shame. It's all in the past. How do you move forward now? So, you do know that investing in the stock market is a proven way to stay ahead of inflation. Okay, so far, so good. But you also know that you're a married couple, you're in your 60s, and say you have about $300,000. We'll call it that. That's just not going to cut it. I'm sorry. It may sound like it's a lot of money, enough to sustain the two of you for potentially another 30 years. It really won't, and you can probably even figure that out with a little back of the envelope calculation, actually. So this is not theoretical. I had a couple come to my office a few years ago. This was their exact scenario, and their idea to overcome the savings shortfall was to invest very aggressively, pick single stocks, trade in and out, and I guess hope and pray that their stock picking and market timing would always be correct. Now, that's a very difficult way to plan for a secure retirement. Difficult as in pretty much impossible. And I want to have a disclaimer right here. I actually do not object to investing or even trading in single stocks or options. That's fine, but it should not be the heart and soul of your retirement strategy. If you like excitement with your investing, then retirement investing, I'm sorry, is going to be a real snooze. You'll be bored if you're doing it the right way. Okay, so what is the problem with stock picking and market timing as your main strategy for retirement planning? Well, let's start with stock picking. Did you, back in March 2020, believe that the U.S. stock market would be climbing to record highs just by mid-year, and that Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook would account for nearly a quarter of the S&P 500's value? And no, don't act like you knew. That's hindsight bias, meaning in hindsight, you can validate what you now know to be true. Would you have picked all those stocks as big leaders? Probably not. You would have been panicked about lost advertising revenue, which was a story the media was telling back in March and into the spring as well. And it was true for a few minutes. But I bet you would not have had the confidence to jump into those or into an index, no matter what your hindsight brain is telling you. Okay, so how about some other big 2020 stock leaders? And there are plenty more, but here's a few. MSCI, financial company. IDEX Laboratories. DPZ, that's Domino's. Okay, this case seems pretty straightforward right now with home delivery, but really, Domino's? Don't you have better pizza delivery near you? I know you do. I know it's cheap, but stop with the Domino's. Do yourself a favor. Anyway, you can look at the stock. The stock is doing very well. Here's another one. Old Dominion Freight Lines, a trucker, ODFL, Dexcom. So you get my point. Did you even know that some of those companies existed? Never mind being able to pick those very stocks as among the biggest potential gainers in 2020. So that's the problem right there with stock picking. Now, what about market timing? What is that anyway? Now, that's pretty simple. It means shuffling around your investments because you believe the market is going up or down and you want to take advantage of that trend. Now, that sounds super simple and logical, doesn't it? When you know markets are going up, you buy. And when you know they're going down, they sell. Voila, or viola, as they say. But unfortunately, nobody rings a bell or makes an announcement to tell you when to buy or sell. And if you're picking single stocks, how do you know which ones to sell? It's really too complicated. And here's the kicker. Even if in the highly unlikely event you time it right with all the right stocks, if you're doing this in a taxable account, the taxes will crush you. And then you face trading fees in many cases. I know there's free trading right now, but you might face some fees in some cases. It's really just not a good approach, not smart, not the way to invest for retirement. At its heart, market timing is believing you can predict market action, and guess what? You can't do it. Nobody can consistently and accurately. Yeah, people get lucky at times, but that's just what it is, getting lucky with their picks at times. And here's a quote I like from Peter Lynch, who was the former manager of the Fidelity Magellan Fund. He's absolutely right. It's the worrying, it's the anticipating, it's the preparing that causes people to lose out on market gains. Now, we have a very recent example of people being wrong about market direction, and that's what happened back in March, when the market tumbled in the early days of the pandemic, and the most respected voices in economics and investing believed we were headed for a long market decline. Remember all those predictions? Now, I'm not going to get into all the market internals, the issues of Wall Street versus Main Street. Those are valid discussions, but that's for another day. I just want to point out how wrong the so-called experts were. So don't fall for those voices in the news who are advising you to buy and sell because of current events. There's plenty of those voices, but it's not a proven way to build sustainable wealth for a goal like retirement. And like I said, am I against trading altogether? No, I'm not. But let's come back to the couple I talked about earlier who wanted to trade aggressively for their retirement. Here's what had been a better plan for them. And by the way, they didn't want to do any of this, so they never became my clients. They kept thinking they knew something better. But here would have been some starting points that I would have recommended to them, and they're not as fun as trading. First, lower your expenses. Maybe even downsize your house. Remember, they didn't save enough, so now they have to take some drastic measures. They didn't like that. Get the investments you do have into a scientifically designed asset allocation portfolio. You can use mutual funds, you can use ETFs. Don't guess about this. Don't use this for trading. In your retirement portfolio is not where you want to gamble on stocks. It's where you want to take a pretty conservative, boring approach to meeting specific goals, like retirement. Now, if you need to work, this is my third idea here, to generate some income, please do it. In your 60s, you are not too old. And despite what's going on with certain industries right now, I know that people are out of work, but there are still plenty of ways to generate income, maybe online, through a small business of your own, or keep working in your job if you can. In other words, don't bank on retiring as soon as you'd hoped. It may not be a smart move. Okay, I hope you found all this helpful today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.